Sabotage is a French word. It comes from the word sabot, which is the French term for the type of wooden shoe commonly associated with traditional Dutch culture. In its most literal sense, the word originated to sort of express the type of loud noise one can make when wearing those types of wooden shoes. In a larger sense, Wikipedia defines sabotage as a deliberate action aimed at weakening a polity, effort, or organization through subversion, obstruction, disruption, or destruction. And destruction is the key word here. Alternatively, sabotage can be defined as any effort designed to hurt or damage the interests of a person or group. So the intent is very much to hurt. Sabotage is something we normally associate with war and government and acts of defiance against government and business, such as revolution, demonstration, and strike. Sabotage is part of narcissistic abuse, and although workplace bullying is a form of narcissistic abuse, sabotage is less common than other workplace bullying techniques. And it's important to distinguish among sabotage and the workplace bullying techniques of withholding and extortion. Withholding is when workplace bullies do not give you the materials, resources, tools, knowledge, or information to even get the work off the ground in the first place. And extortion is when workplace bullies straight up steal the work from you or steal other things from you, your time, your ideas, and even your money and personal items and possessions. When workplace bullies sabotage, instead of stealing the work from you, they straight up destroy it. And that's something that can be difficult for them to pull off. The whole point of workplace bullying is that it needs to be as subtle and direct and passive-aggressive as possible, so the workplace bullies can never be called on their behavior and it can never get back to them. As narcissist workplace bullies care about one thing and only one thing in this world or in this life, and that's their image, their reputation, what other people think of them, and how they look to other people. So they almost never do or say anything that can get back to them, that can make them look bad, or that can get them into trouble, or worse, get them fired. And if workplace bullies are destroying your stuff, that's something that could be documented. Although sabotage is relatively rare, workplace bullies do sabotage their targets. And it can be argued that sabotage is actually very common in any toxic, maladaptive, dysfunctional work environment, because all workplace bullying is sabotage. What do workplace bullies sabotage? Well, if the intent is to destroy your work, it's important to make a distinction between goods and services. If you happen to work in a profession that manufactures actual goods, let's say you work in a factory that makes widgets, all the workplace bully has to do is destroy your widgets. But in America, at least, most of the economy has become a service economy. And when it comes to service professions, teaching or forms of therapy, for example, it's difficult for workplace bullies to sabotage your actual work, which is the service that you are providing. So they attack instead ancillary things related to or unrelated to your work. Sabotage is very common in workplace bullying environments that unfortunately make use of community file sharing systems like Dropbox. If those files are accessible to everyone, workplace bullies can and do go in and destroy and or change them without your permission. To use the example of teaching, workplace bullies can enter your grading system, destroy and or change your grades, and destroy things that you have created, documents like presentations and lesson plans. For that reason, I argue one of the very few easy ways to address workplace bullying is to make sure that you always have a backup of everything that you create and not trust file sharing systems as a safe place to store them. The opposite of destruction is creation, and destructive workplace bullies love to sabotage anything that you create, especially anything that you create that makes you happy. Your documents that you create can be destroyed in almost any profession. Workplace bullies can sabotage just something interesting and creative that you wrote or drew on the community whiteboard. And if you have any creative endeavors in your personal life, a website, a YouTube channel, other forms of social media, or just a creative hobby, and workplace bullies hear about it, they will use techniques like mind games and, yes, black magic to influence you to destroy those things yourself. yourself. When workplace bullies are really sick and mentally ill, they destroy your literal physical items and possessions, especially your food. If you leave food in the community refrigerator, workplace bullies taint the food with poisons or other toxins, and you may notice that the food makes you sick when you get home. You may also notice workplace bullies insisting on accompanying you to Starbucks or other places, presumably to put something in your drink or food. But we are not 13 years old, so no, we don't have to go to Starbucks together. One of the most common ways that narcissists in general try to sabotage their victims is through rumors and lies, slandering spread through the narcissistic smear campaign. But when workplace bullies do that, I categorize that in the workplace bullying technique of gossip. If the overall intent of sabotage is to hurt, then all workplace bullying is sabotage, because that's the overall intent of workplace bullying too. All workplace bullying techniques have the ultimate intent of hurting the target. In fact, a detailed itemization of sabotage techniques officially sanctioned by the government during wartime sounds so much like workplace bullying that it is uncanny. During World War II, the United States government had an Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, that was an intelligence agency and the precursor to the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA. And according to Wikipedia, that office published a manual entitled General Interference with Organizations and Procedures, containing advice for how to sabotage the Nazi Party from within. Allow me to read you some of that manual's recommendations and how they directly correlate to some of the workplace bullying techniques that I have identified. When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible, never fewer than 5. Hold meetings when there is more critical work to be done. Harassment. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Narcissistic superficiality. Haggle over precise wordings of communications, minutes, resolutions. Unfair criticism. In making work assignments, always sign out unimportant jobs first. Assign important jobs to inefficient workers with poor machines. Sabotage. Insist on perfect work in relatively unimportant products. Send back for refinishing those with the least flaw. Unfair criticism. Approve other defective parts whose flaws are not visible to the naked eye. Sabotage. To lower morale and with it production. Be pleasant to inefficient workers. Give them undeserved promotions. Discriminate against efficient workers. Complain unjustly about their work. Unfair criticism. Multiply procedures and clearances involved in issuing instructions, paychecks, and so on. See that multiple people must approve everything where one would do. Sabotage. Spread disturbing rumors that sound like inside information. And there we have the narcissistic smear campaign, otherwise known as gossip. I've written 119 pages in which I believe I detailed almost every aspect of workplace bullying, but I couldn't say it better myself. There's not a lot that's funny about war, which involves death, and similarly, there's not very much that's funny about workplace bullying, which can ultimately result in death in the form of homicide and suicide. But that one really made me laugh. The number one thing that workplace bullies sabotage is the workplace. They just ruin everything. Workplace bullies make the whole place an unpleasant environment for everyone, not just the target, and they do it with their energy. One of my theories about workplace bullying is that it is actually spiritual warfare happening on an energetic level. Workplace bullies are profoundly unlikable people. They can't get anyone to love them, and they can't get anyone to really like them very much. When workplace bullies roll around, there's just this sort of collective internal groan, and everybody goes, oh shit. that guy is here. An acquaintance of mine calls it being slimed. You're in a perfectly good mood, everything's fine, and then the narcissistic workplace bully slithers past, projectile vomiting out his nasty, vile energy and single-handedly lowering the vibration of the entire room. On those rare days when workplace bullies are for some reason absent, it's like the whole place has been illuminated with peace and calm. And I bet you remember those days as the only pleasant days on which you worked in that workplace. Workplace bullies love to accuse the target of being quote-unquote negative, which is a projection if I ever heard one. But the target of workplace bullying is almost always, without fail, the lightest person in the place. And when the target is eliminated, it's like someone turned out all the lights. Workplace bullies love to destroy what you create. And you create because you are creative. You are creative because you are fashioned in the image of the Creator and imbued with the Holy Spirit, which is creativity. I don't like to do black and white thinking, but unfortunately this plane has a lot of duality. And the opposite of creation is destruction. When workplace bullies sabotage, they are not working in the interest of the Creator, but very much in the interest of you-know-who. The function of all evil is to spread loss throughout the world. Workplace bullies are narcissists, and narcissism remains poorly understood by a lot of people, including some mental health professionals. A narcissist is not someone who's arrogant or who thinks that he looks good. A narcissist is at the core a dead soul with no real internal life or self, and that real self has been substituted by the false self. A thin, superficial veneer and a flimsy, fragile house of cards that demands constant supply that has to be sourced exclusively from other people because the narcissist is completely disconnected from creation. Narcissists are takers, and whatever they cannot take, they have to destroy. Narcissists have to destroy because they cannot create, because they have nothing to give. Narcissists are empty. The most disturbing thing about workplace bullying or any form of narcissistic abuse, I find, is not necessarily the mean-spiritedness or the appalling behavior. It is the emptiness. When you're standing in the same room with a narcissistic workplace bully, you are standing on the edge, at the precipice, looking out over the abyss, the void, the black hole, the gaping maw of their insatiable greed. And nature abhors a vacuum, and that's exactly what it feels like. Narcissists cannot self-create, self-generate, self-regulate, self-anything, because they don't have selves. The purpose of all abuse is to create in the target the external reflection of the abuser's own internal reality. When narcissistic workplace bullies try to destroy your stuff, they are trying to create a reflection of their own lack. These are people who live in a constant state of spiritual deprivation and have not healed their poverty or scarcity consciousness. So that's an introduction to the workplace bullying technique of sabotage. To read more in detail, I've written an essay on workplace bullying. It's on my website, and I include that information in the description. The reason I create this video series is to establish a forum where targets of workplace bullying can share their stories and experiences in a kind of support group. So you can know, number one, you're not crazy. Workplace bullying is real, and your feelings are perfectly valid and justified. And number two, you're not alone. Unfortunately, countless others have experienced the same thing. So I look forward to reading your comments, and I promise to try to respond to each one. Take care.